This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the Eau Claire Area School Board. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Eau Claire School Board. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you to all who are attending our meeting this evening and all who are joining us by our live stream at valleymediaworks.org or WRFP 101.9 FM. Secretary Everson, are we in compliance with open meeting law notification?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please, for verification of quorum?
Commissioner Bika? Here. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle?
Here.
Commissioner Harder?
Here.
Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Here.
Commissioner Luganville?
Here.
Commissioner Torres?
Here.
Commissioner Boo?
Here. All right. Our first item tonight is the public forum. This is a 30-minute time period in which members of the public may address the board to express viewpoints or concerns on agenda or non-agenda items. Each speaker will be allowed up to 4 minutes to address the board. The board will not hear personal complaints of school personnel, nor any person connected with the school system in the public forum. When I call your name and you come up to the microphone, the light is already on, so you don't have to do anything, and just state your name for the public record. First on the docket is Dan Wilson.
Dan Wilson, 3753 Patton Street, Eau Claire, 01. Good evening. I'm a special education teacher at Memorial High School and the employee rep to the Claremont Center Clinic Advisory Board. Let me apologize about the scratch in my throat. I've been fighting it for a week, so I'll try my best. I would like to just take a couple minutes of your time to share with you some hot off the press sneak peek results, preliminary results from an employee survey regarding the Claremont Center, which has been in the district update the last 2 Fridays. This survey will officially close at the end of this week, and the full results will be available then. They will be shared with the Claremont Center Advisory Board at our quarterly meeting next week. I think it's important that you know the employees' thoughts and feelings regarding the Claremont Center as you make your decisions regarding which health plan company and options you will vote on later tonight. So far, 210 employees have responded, and of those, 89.1% say they use the clinic for their routine physicals and additional appointments at least some of the time. Another 2.4% say they use the clinic for their routine physicals regularly. This means that of those that responded, 91.5% of Eau Claire Area School District employees use the Claremont Center annually. When asked if they would recommend it to a friend or family member, which is the true test of how much something is liked, 98.3% of the respondents answered they would recommend it. Only 1.7% said they would not. So why is this important in your decision-making process tonight? In addition to the advisory board, I've been on the Holistic Insurance Committee for many, many years. I think since 2003. We've worked hard over the past few years to encourage staff to take better care of themselves. We've worked hard to get staff to visit the Claremont Center for their care. The survey clearly shows the staff is feeling positive about the Claremont Center and that they have a willingness to use it. Next year, if we stay with Security Health Plan, all visits to the Claremont Center will not count toward our insurance utilization percentage. This should help keep our costs lower going forward into the future years. The Prevea option A will take the near-site clinic away. In addition to removing this valued clinic, you'll be forcing an overwhelmingly large percentage of staff to find a new primary care doctor and potentially new hospital services. With the positive feedback received from the staff and the amount of time and effort that has been put in by multiple staff members over the past few years, myself included, it would be extremely frustrating to see changes made when we are at the doorstep to seeing all the work we've put in finally pay off at the Claremont Center utilization. Lastly, I would encourage you to vote for insurance option B, which stays with the Security Health Plan. This plan comes in under the $1 million budgeted for the district. Although it should be noted that it does come with increased monthly cost to employees, has an increased deductible for the employees, has a doubling of the copay for non-Claremont Center visits, and increases employee cost for some prescriptions. it is still the best option being presented tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Gail Halmstead.
My name, as he said, is Gail Halmstead, and I live at 225 Riverfront Terrace. I asked to speak this evening about a champion for Eau Claire Public Schools, Chris Hammock Boyle. Let me begin by citing Volume 1, article in the December issue 2017, which listed women leaders in Eau Claire, in which Chris was named along with three others. So, how has she shown herself to be a leader? Well, let me name a few ways. Chris and I have taught for many years, but our path crossed very little when we were teaching here in Eau Claire. But after we both retired, I was asked to join one of her committees, which was called Project 13. Do you remember that? Okay, and the purpose was to bring attention to the huge public school underfunding issue. She was a tireless advocate for fair funding. When the district realized that they would again have to initiate a referendum, she helped create a Steve, and I mention this name because, boy, he was good, Steve Bechtel, did I pronounce that right, Chris? Video with knowledgeable people, Madison professors, to explain the complex school funding formula and why districts have had to go to referendums asking taxpayers to raise their own taxes in order to pay the bills. The result was Eau Claire citizens overwhelmingly approved the referendum. You can still see it, and I would recommend going to YouTube and looking for Road to Referendum. It will explain it all. Chris is also a connector, so she didn't stop there. Part of the underfunding problem is that in 1990, or right around there, the legislator under Governor Tommy Thompson created a dual school system and giving funding to both public and private without taxpayer approval. So in a trip to Madison not too long ago, Chris met with legislators, and one being former legislator, I think of his name now all of a sudden. I got it here? Yeah. Dana Walks and his aide Mike, and together they wrote up the voucher transparency bill. The bill would have required municipalities to, on this tax statement, to list how much money was going to both school systems, public and the private vouchers. It never passed, but other districts adopted the policy. One of the most important pieces, and I gotta look at my time here, of work she helped craft was the proposed creation of a third standing board committee in 2015. Lastly, in her years of work with the state and CISA 11 on early childhood programming that will have a lasting impact on early childhood education. So Chris, I thank you for your incredible service to the district, to the community, and for being the voice for our young children.
Thank you. Next is Nathan Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Anderson, and I spoke with Kim last week, and she suggested that I come here tonight, so that is why I'm here along with my wife Julie and my daughter Lauren. We live at S11335 County Road F in Oliva, Wisconsin. And we're writing to ask for help for Lauren. When we moved here in 2005, we bought land south of town, specifically because it was in the Eau Claire School District. And so we work in Eau Claire. I grew up in Altoona, and we live, and this is where we do all of our living, in Eau Claire. Our children attended, we have 3 boys and a girl, and our children attended Crestview Academy for their elementary, middle school years for the most part. And so when it came time to enroll our older sons at high school, they went to Memorial. It was very easy. Just signed them up and off they went. So our 2 oldest sons, they graduated in 2014 and 2016. And it was sometime in that time frame, I don't know exactly when, but my wife went to the fire department to vote, and specifically wanted to vote on an Eau Claire area school district issue, and was told, you don't live in the Eau Claire school district. And we were shocked. What do you mean we don't live in the Eau Claire school district? Everybody around us does. So how could this be? So we discovered that we live in a very small little square that is Oliva, floating within Eau Claire. It was very strange. So we could have just continued with our sons attending Memorial without saying anything, because frankly, that would have been really easy. But decided we didn't feel right about that with you not getting Eau Claire School District, not receiving the money for that. So we open enrolled, and it was an easy process, and our youngest son was able to enter Memorial without a problem. And our daughter, she went to South for 6th and 7th grade and had a great time, and decided to go to Crestview for her 8th grade year. So now it's time to get ready to go to Memorial next year. And so I came, and my wife and I were working on the open enrollment forms, and discovered that all open enrolled students now automatically go to North, which was another shock. So as we're thinking about just what that might be, because like I said, we live south of town down by Cleghorn. And so to make the additional, to go all the way up to North with the additional amount of activities that high school students have, along with trying to be, as parents, involved with what's going on, I don't know how we're going to do this, because we want to be in the Eau Claire School District. That's where we live, and it makes sense for her to be at Memorial. Lauren is very involved in music and in drama, and she's already connected with Mrs. Kay, the music teacher there, and ready to get ready to audition for the Old Abe Show Choir next year. We've been a part of the show choir family since 2014, and we want to be able to have her audition now such that she can be involved in activities when fall rolls around. And it's obviously significant that her 3 brothers also went there, so Memorial is in the fabric of her family. The bus goes right by our house every morning at 6:30 to pick up our neighbors. And one of them, they're our friends, and the older girl is going to be driving next year. It'll be very easy to get Lauren to school at Memorial. And so we're asking that Lauren be allowed to attend Memorial under these circumstances, and that a decision could be made soon so that she can get ready for fall activities and have a chance to be involved in those activities. So thank you for your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Jenny Arkand Johnston.
Hello, my name is Jenny Arkand Johnston. I am a resident of the Eau Claire School District. For the past 3 years, my daughter has been open enrolled out of the district to attend a virtual school, as there has not been a local option. And I'm here tonight to express my enthusiastic support of the proposed Eau Claire virtual school. Our family's experience does not look like what some may think of as a traditional virtual school. Despite the name, it is not required that my daughter spend any of her learning time using a screen, which is what fits for our family. She's in early elementary, and her virtual school provides us with a high-quality curriculum choice that we work through together each day, guidance and support, and a flexible schedule that helps us with accountability. I'd like to share an example from the last few weeks to highlight the success that a virtual school can ignite. Our virtual school provided us with a book and a discussion guide on Louis Pasteur, and I was skeptical about her interest in this as a first grader, but I shortly found out that she was absolutely enchanted by this book and was gasping as we read through it together, as she heard of things that were previously unknown and unseen being discovered. This quickly led to her pulling out a microscope, and we gathered yeast and supplies for her to explore, which led to an outpouring of her questions to continue her discovery. We are at home, and so we have the opportunity to embrace and extend these lessons as they present themselves and the moments of enchantment as they arise. Many virtual schools in Wisconsin offer enrichment programs where students can gather in a community space and participate in optional classes in music, art, science, and more. All virtual school families in our area who would like this option would need to open enroll and then drive to the district that's providing the services at this time, as it's not an option here. I'm asking to bring a virtual school here, and as a district, we could continue to expand upon the options for creative learning experiences for all the children within our district. The amount of community connections that exist, as evidenced by the outpouring of summer course offerings available, show the great potential to continue these partnerships throughout the year with students participating in a local virtual school. Speaking for myself and several homeschooling friends, at this time the traditional brick and mortar school is not the right fit. We're looking for more time for our children to explore and create and play in their home and community. A virtual school allows this. The strengths and needs of each family in our district are unique, and continuing to expand upon the options available by adding a local virtual school will continue the district's vision of encouraging each individual student's growth in the way that they learn best. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Missy Crisp.
Hi, my name is Missy Crisp. I live at 670 Lamplighter Court, and just to kind of follow up with what Jenny had to say, I'm here to support the virtual school. I currently help with homeschool families in the community, offering tutoring and mentoring to them. And during that process, oftentimes the topic comes up as to why they chose to homeschool in the first place. And quite often, one of the main reasons that come up is that the traditional model hasn't been a perfect fit for them, as Jenny mentioned. But there's something else that often comes up as well, equally, that I think is really important to note, and that is that these homeschool families, even though they've chosen a different option, there's something else that they bring up almost every single time, and that is that they feel that the Eau Claire School District is exceptional. It stands apart from other districts in the area, and it's something that they would truly love to affiliate with in their children's schooling. But then we come back to how the traditional model hasn't worked quite well for them. And that's where I feel that the virtual school comes into play, where we can help fill in those gaps for them. One of the things that I think this district is very well known for, that has a reputation for, is being able to look at the community, look at the needs of the students, and switch gears as needed and fill in those gaps, try innovative things to make things work. And again, that's where the virtual school component comes into play. I think, as I said, this school district is very well known for its high standards, for being top-notch compared to many other districts. I have utmost confidence that this board and that this district is capable of taking on a virtual school, offering that as an option, meeting the needs of those students that at this time might feel like they're kind of falling through the cracks, and at the same time keeping the high standards that you're known for. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker for the public forum tonight is Ben Holman.
Thank you. Good evening.
Please turn your microphone on. Thank you. You got it now.
All right. I think I bumped the cable. All right. I'd like to first recognize Commissioner Hambach-Boyle and her service to the school district over the last 40 years. I can speak for many in this community, and I can say that you're greatly appreciated and you'll be severely missed. So thank you very much for your work over the last 4 decades. I look forward to the demo trends report that will be presented this evening. I've reviewed the materials that were going to be presented at the previous meeting, so this might be a bit premature, but I think now is an important time to bring up some points. I've attended actually every demo trends meeting since October and every English listening session, and I've compared that with the material that I've seen for tonight. And my conclusion is that the recommendation from Demo Trends is virtually unchanged from back in November when they were discussing it, and I don't see any signs of community input in what they are presenting tonight. I look forward to seeing how the community input is represented, but it is not in their ultimate proposal. There is an exception of minor tweaks to one neighborhood, but it's virtually the same. I trust that Demo Trends is approaching their recommendations in good faith. They have done difficult work. I think they've emphasized evening enrollment, putting every school at the same percentage over continuous enrollment for individual students, and the resulting maps are tidy but they move more students than are necessary. There are alternatives to their drastic proposal, such as utilizing Locust Lane for 4K space, flexible boundaries between Roosevelt and Sherman, which is currently in place but could be expanded, and combining a new 4K site with another elementary school. I know one hardworking Roosevelt PTA member, Kelly Hendrickson, just sent a detailed proposal to you today that incorporates some of those ideas. The point I'd like to leave you with is that we must look at capacity numbers not as abstract numbers, but as individual children with complex social and emotional lives. Schools are not easily interchangeable, and every child moved because of a boundary change is a child that our district has chosen to inflict some degree of trauma on. So it's a sober reality, and I urge you to proceed with empathy and care as you approach this decision. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next is our superintendent's report. Dr. Hardebeck.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to review the upcoming Board of Education events. On May 1st, there will be a meeting of the Budget Development Committee, and that will take place at 1 o'clock. On May 3rd, there will be a meeting of the Revenue Committee, and that will take place at 1:30 p.m. On May 6th, there will be a meeting of the Policy and Governance Committee, and that will take place at 8:45 a.m. On May 6th, and that evening, there will be the annual organizational meeting of the school board and the regular meeting, which will take place at 7 p.m. And on May 7th at 7 p.m., there will be a meeting of the Family Advisory Council, which will be followed on May 14th by a meeting of the LEAP Committee at 4 p.m. and a meeting of the Demographic Trends and Facility meeting at 4:30 p.m. on May 16th. All of these meetings take place at the Administration Building. I would like to call the board's attention to two special events in which all board members are invited to attend. The first one is on May 9th, and that is at Flynn Elementary School, and it's a celebration of their Blue Ribbon Award. And that will begin at 6:30, but there will be, at 6 o'clock, but there will be a kind of an open house at 5:30 if you can make it. And then on May 22nd is our annual Celebration of Service banquet, and that is to honor all of our retirees. And that will be at Florian Gardens, and that begins at 5:30, so that we hope you can all attend. Thank you. And we have some more, but we'll wait until the President's report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hardebeck. For my President's report, I first want to share that Dr. Hardebeck and I will be interviewing student representative candidates next week, and we will bring the selected student names for your approval at our second meeting in May. I also want to recognize our school board election that took place on April 2nd. Board members Aaron Harder and Eric Torres were both re-elected to the board for a 3-year term, and Tim Nordine was elected for a 3-year term as well. So congratulations to our incumbents that were re-elected as well as our newcomer, and I look forward to working with all of you in the coming year. Finally, I would like to recognize Commissioner Chris Hambuck-Boyle, as tonight is her last meeting as a retiring board member. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle was first elected to the board in 2013 and was re-elected in 2016. She served as board president and most recently as board clerk. She retired from the school district the year before she ran for the board, in 2012, after 33 years of service, spending her entire teaching career at the preschool level. Chris helped start the 4-year-old kindergarten program that is now EC4T, and worked to expand educational options for students with disabilities. So I think it's safe to say that Chris's impact in Eau Claire will be long-lasting and life-changing for so many children and families. As an early childhood teacher, Chris made consistent home visits, connecting with, we have a prop here. She made consistent home visits, connecting with families and kids at every opportunity. And as a board member, she continued that record of service, constantly spending time in our schools and at district events with our staff and our students, showing them that she cared. She's always been willing to ask the important questions, always with the best interests of students in mind. I have known Chris since I was sitting in one of those desks as the student rep for North High School, when Chris was the vice president of the Eau Claire Association of Educators. And we also got to work together on the 2011 referendum committee. And I'm very thankful that I got to be your vice president when you were president of our board. Chris also provided a very important early linkage between our district and the Wisconsin Public Education Network. We worked together on a lot of policy changes and resolutions, and Chris was a major factor in the success of our November 2016 referendum. For anyone who knows Commissioner Hambach-Boyle, they know that she has a heart for what's best for kids, period. So tonight, on behalf of the school district, we would like to recognize you, Chris, for your 6 years of service on our school board, and thank you for your incredible commitment to the children and families of Eau Claire. And finally, with my report, you see Commissioner Hambach-Boyle is sporting this lovely green Go Public t-shirt. This morning was the Joint Finance Committee in River Falls. They're hearing about the budget. There's still the opportunity for anyone to submit testimony regarding the budget. And I think that if you can give a thank you to Chris, it would be doing that, okay? So if you have any opinions or comments about supporting public education, supporting special education that you'd like to send for the budget, you can send those by email to budgetcomments@legis.wisconsin.gov, and your comments will be shared with the whole Joint Finance Committee. So,
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
On April 24th at 2004 Highland Avenue, we will be having the ECAE office open from 3 in the afternoon till 9 o'clock at night for people to come in and write their testimonies or video them on their phone, and I will help you get them sent into the Joint Finance Committee. So that goes for anyone in the district, any administrator, or anybody in our community. So come and see me.
Thank you. And that concludes my report and brings us to the student representatives report. Who's going first?
Okay. So it's been a wild 2 weeks. Things are really ramping up at the high school level regarding AP tests. Our pre-registration is on Wednesday. We also had a blood drive at Memorial, and as mundane as it seems, I think thinking deeper about it, it really represents a culture that we create at our schools, giving back, contributing to our community. And although it's only biannual, I think the impact that it has both within our hearts and literally to the donation recipients is far, far more wide-reaching.
So at North, seniors are cramming in and presenting the capstone projects this week. Juniors have just received the ACT scores, and DECA kicks off tomorrow, so seniors are attempting to avoid the inevitable senior slide of the year. AP tests are approaching. The mid-quarter is next week, and graduation is just around the corner. So the rest of the week will just be enjoyed by all the DECA projects, as students get to have a nice little break from class, and other DECA students get to learn a little bit more about business and develop different techniques. So, yeah.
Thank you both. That brings us to our school board committee reports. Policy and Governance Committee.
We met this morning and had an extensive discussion about the LEAP committee, and it was productive. So it's back onto the side of the field, and we'll hear from them soon.
Thank you. Budget Development Committee.
Yeah, Budget Development met Tuesday, April 10th, last Tuesday, April 10th. We discussed our district health insurance options that we have been with for the different providers, and went over the feedback from the Holistic Committee in some detail. And of course, that's on tonight's agenda, so we'll go into more detail with that later. Another topic was Clifton Allen Larson, who recently completed their annual audit of our district financial records. The auditors presented their findings at last week's budget committee. The audit is done to confirm the compliance, correctness, and regularity of our district financial processes and record keeping. It includes a detailed review of factors like our internal budget control processes, decision-making processes, things like that. I'm very happy to say that Clifton Larson Allen found our district was in total compliance with rules and standards across all the measures that they use. So the auditor who reported to our budget committee last week pointed out that it's unusual to have no compliance notes of any kind. So that's a very nice outcome, and it gives us a good opportunity to thank Dr. Hardebeck and Abby Johnson, our Executive Director of Business, and the whole team that helped us achieve this result in our district. I'm really grateful to our financial and budget team for keeping us in compliance along all these different measures. It's a tricky balancing act to hit all these necessary marks, and we've passed with flying colors, so thank you to that team. So those are some of the updates from budget, and we'll meet again on May 1st at 1 p.m.
Perfect. Thank you. And LEAP Committee?
We met last Tuesday. We had a brief update from the Arctic Zone from our newly appointed LEAP ambassador to the Arctic Zone. He had some questions based on some of the things they're experiencing, and we discussed those. We also did some more policy work, which was presented to Policy and Governance today, and we're so close. We're hoping that at our next meeting, we're going to finally get over our last hurdle and get a good, solid policy in place. And then we had a short proposal from the Indie Group, which has rebranded themselves, and without stealing their thunder, it's my understanding that they will be coming back in front of the board to give a presentation shortly.
Thank you. I have one I'd like to share about the Shared Services Committee. I had a meeting with the County Board Chair, Nick Smyer, last week. The county will be requesting that the Shared Services Committee begin to meet again, starting with the new boards and councils being seated and with their committee appointments made. So that will be scheduled in the next few months at their request, but that's a big positive for everyone. So, and that brings us to our legislative update. Do we have a legislative update?
Yes, well, simply to reiterate the possibility of any board member or any community member that is wishing to advocate for more funds for public schools, touch base with me. I can forward the link to be used to upload a written commentary or a video. And number two, tonight there was another a listening session here in Eau Claire. The UW System Task Force for Advancing Teachers and School Leaders in the state of Wisconsin. I took the opportunity and spoke about the need to strategically join efforts with districts like ours to develop either teacher residency programs or create local pathways into the profession of teaching, such as Grow Your Own Teacher programs that we've been talking. So they received the commentaries well, and I was just speaking off the cuff, and they asked me for the notes, so I'm going to have to forward that.
Cool. Thank you, Commissioner Torres. That brings us then to the consent resolution agenda. We will consider approval of all of these items as one item without discussion. If a board member wishes to discuss any item as I read it, simply indicate that you would like it pulled and voted on separately. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 1st, 2019, the minutes of closed session March 25th, 2019, the financial report for March 2019, gifts in the amount of $11,684.74 for the period of March 1st through March 31st, 2019, payment of all bills in the amount of $11,089,078.47, and net payroll in the amount of $5,494,667.53 for the period of March 1st, 2019 through March 31st, 2019. The Human Resources and Employment Report, approved school safety plan, Approve Carl Perkins Administration 66.0301 contract with School District of Fall Creek. Approve School Board Self-Evaluation Objectives. Approve 2019-20 Dental Insurance Plan. Preliminary Notice of Non-Renewal of Teachers with Limited Term Contracts. Resolution recognizing Child Abuse Prevention Month. Approve alternate OPEB Employee Engagement Committee member. And revisions to Policy 342.5, Title I program. So I would entertain a motion to approve 7.2 through 7.15.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, because we have some financial matters, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bika?
Yes.
Commissioner Hambach-Boyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Harder?
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Commissioner Luginbill?
Yes.
Commissioner Torres?
Yes.
Commissioner Boo?
Yes.
Okay, and the consent resolution agenda is passed. That brings us then to our individually considered resolutions. The first is consideration and approval of the 2019-20 health insurance plan for our ECASD staff and their families. So we have a couple presenters, it looks like.
Just making sure it's ready to go.
Good evening. I'm Bill Hines. I work with Associated Benefits and Risk Consulting, and I've been working with the school district for somewhere 15 years plus, I guess, quite a while. We did present 2 weeks ago at the last board meeting what the options were for the health insurance, and just as a quick review, thought we would go through the pros and cons of the two options and then a side-by-side comparison of what the Holistic Committee has come up with for options and then the budget development recommendations. So one of the options was to move people to the Prevea network, which would have the pros as developed by the Holistic Committee. And again, I'll repeat, the Holistic Committee is an employee group that has met on this 2 meetings in a row specifically on this subject, reviewing the options that were before them, and they have come up with their list of pros and cons, and that I'm just going to basically read what they suggested. So the positives to moving to Prevea is, first of all, the specialty cost. The cost of a specialist is a little bit lower than it is at Security Health Plan. There is a premium savings for the district primarily. There is a multiple locations for their clinic offering, and that they would have 3 or 4 of the Prevea clinics specifically that could be used as a clinic offering. The clinic offering, because of the clinics, locations, and placement of hours, they do have longer hours than what our committee does have currently. The negatives are that about 80% of all of the staff members would need to change providers. There is an increased premium to all of the people that would choose to stay with their either Mayo or Marshfield doctors in that network. There is some concern if there would be enough access and if those providers could in fact handle the extra influx of all the new patients from the Eau Claire School District. It would be something just over 4,000 members that would have to go into their locations. They do have a $5 copay for their clinic fee, which is currently at $0. And then the CVS pharmacy is considered out of network for any of those on that insurance plan. By comparison, to stay with the Security Health Plan, and we look at options C and D, which we'll explain on the next slide again as a quick review, but the positives from the committee's decision and review was that there's no change in providers, so everyone gets to keep operating with the same doctors, providers that they've gotten used to over the years. It's a stable employee cost because even with the increase, with the options that are on the table, it's only a very small increase to them. There is a deductible change, but there's feeling that that would impact, and there's feeling and a review of the claims themselves that this does impact a small percentage of the employees. There is some impact, but it's a small percentage. The HRA funds that they do receive from the district every year to help offset their deductibles would in fact remain intact. And there are some retrospective agreements that could be possible rebates to the district. If we added another 150 members that would attribute to the Claremont Center, there'd be a rebate of about $40,000 for the district. And in the premium area, if we would hit certain premium goals, it would represent about 4% of the premium. So again, we did not take any of those into consideration because there are goals that do need to be met. So when we look at the financial side, it's just as presented, these would be extras that would in fact save the school money over time. The negatives would be that there is a higher out-of-pocket for the office expense. Does go from the current $25 up to about $50. There is a higher out-of-pocket maximum because it does have a higher deductible expense again. There is a potential increase. The clinic usage increase might become a little bit of an access issue, but again, since this was written, actually Security has come forward, Marshfield has come forward and said that they are in the process of hiring another doctor for the clinic, at least for some hours, so they felt confident that that was going to happen. And that the HRA contribution stays intact. With option D, it's slightly reduced, but in option C, there's no change whatsoever to that. So when we look at the side-by-side comparisons, the first two blue lines is your current Security Health Plan with the exact plan that they have in effect today, with the renewal right alongside of it. And when you combine the numbers at the very bottom, the district's portion, which is 87.4% of the district, of their premium, is the district's cost. That would increase the district's budget by $2,639,000. If you chose to go with Prevea, you have to look at both of those columns together, because the HMO cost, for example, is $84, but if the employee, staff member chose to stay with Marshfield or Mayo, they would have to pay the full difference in the premium. In order to reach the $1.9 million savings, all of the contributions would have to be based on the HMO. So you can see that the premium on the single would go for in-network 84 would be 186 to stay where they are currently versus the 109 that they're paying on even on the renewal. Going down to the family plan, you can see the cost there would be $219 for the HMO, and if they chose to go and keep their same providers, it would go up to $482. So it's more than double what the HMO price is, and the family plan currently is $270 with the renewal rather. So it would be $200+ increase there for each month for each employee. We did develop 3 different options for Security Health Plan, B, C, and D. Option B is to increase the deductible. All of these 3 options increase the deductible to $5,000, of which a good portion of that is funded through HRAs and bridge pieces and so on that have been in place for the school district for quite a few years. None of those would change. The only thing that would change was the deductible on the tail end of it would go from $4,000 to $5,000. And with those, in option B, everything stays the same except the deductible and increase in the office copays. You can see again that the premiums go up about $10 from the current price, and when you look at it overall, it does represent a positive $923,000 to the school district in their dollar numbers. So it is the $1 million that we had talked about briefly at the last meeting. It does meet that goal. Option C is the same deductibles and copays and so on, but there is a co-insurance of 80%. The employee would pay 20% from $5,000 deductible up until they have paid out a total of $6,000 in their worst case scenario for any, no matter how long or whatever the condition may exist, it could get up to $6,000. And again, on reviewing claims over the last couple of years, we do know that that would be a small percentage based on the history. With option C, the premium goes up from the current plan. It goes up about $4, and it goes up $1 on the family plan and so on. And that does represent, and the HRA stays 100% intact, so that the employee would receive $1,000 for every single enrolled employee and $2,000 for every family enrolled employee. And then the bridge loan, the bridge coverage from $1,500 to $3,000 per employee stays intact with no changes. So that represents positive to the budget of $273,485. And option D is the same plan design, so the premiums are the same up above, but in that option we do shrink the HRA back $100 for a single and $200 for a family, so it drops to $900 single and $1,800 family, and that represents a $44,985 positive to your current budget. When reviewed by the Holistic Committee, the preference of the committee, and again, they realize it's just their preference they'd like to express, was option B was their first choice, option C was their second choice, option D was their third choice, and Prevea was their last choice of the list of 4 choices. So I guess it's I make from the Budget Development Committee, I've been told that they are recommending option C to be presented for the board approval. So, are there any questions?
Any board member questions? Yes, Commissioner Harder.
I don't have a question so much as a comment. I can just say is, from the Budget Committee, some of the thinking that went into C, the option C, the recommendation. All of these represent a mix of burden on staff with burden on the district, to some different combinations of where we're placing that burden, whether it's financial or otherwise, in terms of providers that are available. We discussed that option C we thought represented a good middle ground between the savings of something like a Prevea, but with less of burden on our staff. When we look at, I think the Holistic Committee brought out some of those concerns pretty clearly about, I think one of the biggest ones being that 80% of our staff who are currently would not have coverage with their current provider under Prevea. They would have to pay extra for that. So we're kind of shifting, although there's a nice savings number there under Prevea. What we're, in a sense, what we're doing is shifting the burden of that cost from the district to the employee. So we looked at some of these factors. It's hard to quantify all of them exactly and precisely, but really we came to the conclusion that C represented a decent middle ground. So that's how we got there.
Thank you, Commissioner Harder. Are there any other questions at this time? Would board members like to make a motion regarding one of the options?
I'll move option C forward.
Option C? Okay. Option C has been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that? I'll just say that I think that when we talk about that, and one of the things that's great is you saw that our dental insurance plan
stayed at 0.
Stayed at 0, and that's the great news. I think as far as this plan, looking at the factors that are top of mind for me, and I'm sure for all of us, are continuity of care, quality of care, capacity of care, and cost of care. And so I think in considering all of those factors, some of these are better than others in maybe 1 or 2, but I think I would certainly go with probably option C as the best in terms of taking each of those into account. So I would support option C. And thank you, Mr. Hines, for being here with us.
Thank you for letting me go home early tonight.
Hey, you're welcome. I told members I was going to try to be a lot quicker than last time.
That.
Yes, we put you at the top for that reason. All right, so I don't see any other discussion or questions, so we will do a roll call vote on this.
Commissioner Bika? Yes. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Harder?
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Commissioner Luginbill?
Yes.
Commissioner Torres?
Yes.
Commissioner Vu?
Abstain. Okay, and that motion carries with 6 yes votes and 1 abstention. That brings us then to our next item, which is the Eau Claire Virtual Charter School Contract.
You just have to.
Good evening. Shannon Pinkert and I are here to bring back the virtual school charter contract to you. And so we're going to walk through most of this you've seen already before, but we have some updates based on the feedback you gave us at the last meeting and also that we received between meetings as well. So the Alignment to our strategic plan for the virtual school touches each one of our 5 strategic plan priority areas. It's a new way for us to reach students on the academic achievement level, students that we, in a different way academically. It creates a safe space for some of our students. As Jenny noted during the public comment, the setting for her child is something we've heard from more than one parent in terms of creating a learning environment that is conducive to their child's needs. The collaborative cultures allows us an opportunity, and high quality staff, those two are going to be mixed together because we're going to be tapping into our staff's expertise based on the change in our model. We are bringing you a new model that is a smaller footprint to begin with, but it also will give us an opportunity to work with our staff to develop the virtual school on a progressive way over the course of the next year. And finally, still in place is that opportunity for us to have those, as Jenny mentioned, like the summer school setting, to still connect with the community through partnerships. That's still part of our plan. That did not go away as we looked at the pilot opportunity for next year. This is just a reminder that you have the authority as a board to establish a new charter school agreement with a separate entity. Of course, the entity is Eau Claire Virtual School, Inc., and so that is something that's within your discretion and you have the opportunity to vote on this evening. So this is a bit of a shift in the timeline from what we talked about last 2 weeks ago. So back last month, Eau Claire Virtual School Inc. became a legal entity. The contract was first submitted to you on the 1st 2 weeks ago. There's a revised contract, and you should have received a redlined version of that so you can see all the changes that have been made. If approved, we will then submit this evening. We'll submit it to the Department of Public Instruction for approval, and then we would pilot for next year. Also, if approved, the recruitment and efforts would begin, including the community information sessions. And then something that is, we talked about, so if we have 28 seats, and 28 seats, by the way, is the number wasn't just chosen at random. The model that's coming to you is a 6 through 12 grade school, so that covers 7 different grade levels. And the committee, or the board, the virtual board, landed on about, on average, 4 seats. That could mean you could have 28 kids. Because of that, there will be a lottery. You could have 28 kids all in one grade if the lottery just happens to work out that way. Or you could have them evenly spread. But the number 28 was chosen because it would allow for an average of 4 per grade level. The reason for that, too, is it felt like it was a sustainable model for the first year, especially trying to get this school off the ground. Because the numbers are small, it then begs the question about who would be able to get into the school. Because if it's a school, the students can actually open and roll into this. And so because of actually our timing last month, it actually works out pretty well to this timing, because the open enrollment period ends April 30th, which means that on May 1st to May 31st, we would open the applications to, the only students that could apply would be those that live within our boundaries. So that would allow for us to then run a lottery, to open that up for a month and then run a lottery, a random lottery on those students. And if we have more than 28, then we're full and we're done. If we have less than 28, there wouldn't be a need for a lottery. And then we would then, in July, when alternate open enrollment opens up, we would then open up the remaining spots and then allow people to apply for those spots, and then run a new lottery in August to fill the remaining 28 seats. And then we would have training and staff development after that, and then the first day of school would be in September. So this would actually allow us to target the students first that live within the district due to its timing, which so actually works out pretty well for doing that step.
And just to remind you on the purpose of the virtual school is designed to provide a high quality and innovative remote education that promotes lifelong educational success through a combination of hands-on learning, virtual learning, and community learning experiences. It's intended to develop independent and passionate learners who are engaged in their community and our world. It's about giving students and families options for different types of learning. It's so important that we continue to evolve, always looking at ways to stay relevant and embrace change. It's funny, I was thinking about why I'm passionate about this, and it was something that kind of brought to my memory was my mom, when I was in high school, making comments about, man, you're so lucky that you get to play volleyball or that you have sports to choose from. I graduated in '99, and that was about the start of the AP courses, and she was amazed that I had the ability to earn college credits in high school. Now I find myself, it's actually 20-year reunion this year, I find myself 20 years reunion going, wow, it's amazing that these students can actually graduate with an associate's degree. That's really, really, really cool. And so what I'm so passionate about is the fact that we stay relevant and we stay forward thinking. So I don't homeschool my children, but the reason why I'm passionate is because it's about change, it's innovative thinking, it gives options to families, it keeps our district forward moving, and it's a way that we can bring learning to the kids. I was kind of curious, and I went online today and I caught something that Forbes magazine posted stating that e-learning is the future, which made me think about it doesn't just stop in school, that these corporations are actually using virtual learning to train and engage their employees. I own my own real estate firm and actually got my real estate license through virtual learning. So it's very important that we continue this evolvement into the next into this millennium. And then the other point is that because I own my own real estate firm, I'm constantly selling Eau Claire, and I'm constantly supporting the school district every day. And how cool would it be to add this to our amazing repertoire that we offer our students and our families? So, next slide. And then, so I guess just to kind of end my statement, I would like to just remind the board on what our mission is. It would be to provide an innovative and educational path that allows for creative blend of options and opportunities to continually build the strengths of each learner. The virtual school strives to provide high quality, relevant, and enriching learning experiences to develop engaged and passionate learners, confident in their abilities and able to retain and apply developed skills. Oh, this is still me. So after we presented to you at the last board meeting, we did convene together as a committee that following Wednesday to look at making changes to the contract that were proposed on the April 1st meeting. There was obviously board discussion and questions, and then we also had follow-up communication from the board as requested by the 3rd. And so we did make revisions to the contract that we sent to you on April 5th with a request for feedback by April 9th, and there was no feedback received. We did make changes to the contract that were brought to our attention by Dr. Torres. And I don't do that. Yeah, do you want me to go through those? Or? Yeah, so in Article 2, Section D, and Article 2, Section B on page 11. We also looked at page 4, number 3, the coursework section, and then also the page 5C, the curriculum. And then Dr. Bika also emailed some suggestions, and so we did make some changes to Article 8. We recognized the social class, and we will have a diversity plan that we would submit with the annual report. And then Article 9, and yeah, I think that was pretty much it.
This is just a reminder of different duties for the group, and actually this has been a learning curve for the virtual school board to realize that they don't do the heavy lifting of this. Actually, a lot of the work this next year will be done through the teaching and learning, actually virtually all of it will be done through the teaching and learning department. Given the footprint and the size, we feel that we can handle this within our existing staffing. We may need to purchase some time from some of our staff to do some additional ad hoc work to support those efforts. And then the board, you get to annually submit the report, which includes the performance, and then review the annual reports as we bring them to the board. Part of the reason too for the duties, if you're wondering, with the 612, we've been working in this space for quite a while already with virtual programming, not a virtual school, but virtual programming. This isn't new to the teaching and learning department. What is new is setting it up as a school. So there are some things like a handbook and some other things about you know, like if someone were to be discontinued in the school, there's a lot of protocols and processes that have to be put into place. But with 28 students, that's a small enough number that we can really support that group and be much more nimble than we can be had we started with maybe like 150 to start. So the size gives us a lot of flexibility. And if we think about some of the other programs we've started, such as dual immersion, we usually start with around a class size. That group is going to be 24. This is going to be 28. So it's really in that same neighborhood of size. So the model, again, would be the year one would be a pilot. We put a potential increase in revenue. Now keep in mind, if you have 28 students and they are all homeschooled students, you then bring their state aid in at about $9,800 a student. So you have potential revenue of over $250,000. Of course, there will be expenses that revenue will help pay for, including some of the programming that would be contracted out. And again, the 612 is 28 seats. And then again, we will work with our staff to develop that capacity to deliver. Given the small size of the student body for this, we would be able to utilize some of our staff in a way we didn't anticipate had we brought 150 at one time. And then the last question that came up was about internet and or devices. And the model would be that we would provide those if there was a demonstrated need. So we just wouldn't flat out automatically purchase that for a family, but if there was a demonstrated need, we would meet that need. Year 2, we would begin to look at expanding seats and grade levels as well. But by then we would have the infrastructure in place and have some of those practices and protocols in developing a different type of a school. So the final thing, and we talked about this last time, they've asked, we've listened, and so I would just like to review that with students that open enroll when we ask for them the top reasons for leaving due to open enrollment, the top 3 reasons are, number 1, virtual programming, 2, they've started in a district and they want to stay in that district, and the 3rd reason is proximity to the parent's workplace. So this would at least meet that first need about trying to capture students who are looking for that reason to get to that virtual programming, that we could provide that here. Albeit on a much smaller scale, it would be a way for us to start. Questions?
Commissioner Harder?
Thanks for this. So just to clarify, we've got the students who are in the district but not in Eau Claire schools right now would be one group in this first lottery,
Yep.
but another sort of segment would be students in schools who might be interested in transferring to the virtual school.
When you say in schools, meaning in the Eau Claire
They're in
schools?
an Eau Claire school
Yeah,
already.
so any student that lives in our boundaries could apply in that May window. Students that are in our schools, we may, if they do apply, we would probably reach out first to have a conversation with that family, because we already are providing virtual programming to some of our existing family students already.
Yeah.
So that would be a one-on-one opportunity for us to connect with the family and see whether or not that might be the best fit, because it could be something that we could already provide that student without having that student have to switch to the virtual school.
That's great to hear, because we recognize the
Yep.
financial difference
Yep.
between those two cohorts.
And really,
so-
if you already are being served by us, and that's something we already can provide you, they may not realize that, so it may be an opportunity for us to explain that.
Great, okay, thank you.
Couldn't see behind your flowers, I'm sorry. Commissioner Hambach-Boyle.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Thank you for making sure that if a child doesn't have a device, that we would provide that. That was something we talked about last time, so thank you for that. I get a little concerned when I look at our agenda and it says cost is to be determined, and especially since we just made a vote to take option C as opposed to option B relative to our staff's health insurance. Given the fact that this would probably be a pilot for in-district students, and it's a pretty collapsed, I know what we did for 4K, it's a pretty collapsed timeline relative to doing this, and I know when you gave us our 4 options to begin with, the pilot wasn't really part of those 4 options. So, and this is why I say this, we've done lots of pilots in this school district, and oftentimes when you do a pilot and we're going to take an outside vendor, would it behoove us to maybe take the time in option 2 in order for us to include our own staff and use our own staff to provide that right from the beginning, instead of going to a vendor and then coming back and doing that?
So I think this actually is a mix. Like I said, currently we do provide programming through a vendor to our students. So for example, we have a high school student and even some middle school students that do need a virtual experience. This is already what we are doing. So we already are providing vendor-based virtual school opportunities for our students. Actually, what this will allow us to do is, when I say a mix, is, so we're not going to hire staff full-time to do this work this next year, but I do see opportunities, multiple opportunities for working with our existing staff to start to do the some of the ad hoc work to get this going. So for example, I talked about some different features like a handbook, or setting up, maybe we may have 1 or 2 students that are in a high school environment that we already have a high school teacher that at both schools that work with students in an online environment that might be able to take on that. We might be able to then pay that teacher a per hour fee to be able to do some of that work. So there are some opportunities for us to do that in a smaller, like to start to work that in. So I can see it being a mix.
Can I have one follow-up? Is that
Yeah.
okay? What would the upper bound cost of doing this pilot be?
So typically, if you go straight out and purchase programming for a student, I'd have to do some math on it, but typically contracting a course out tends to be about a $250 per course experience. And so you multiply that by the number, like typically a student will take 5 to 7 courses in their load, and then multiply that up by 28 students. Now some of those though can be done cheaper if we can do it with our local people. And so that's why some of the to be determined, because the issue here is we also don't know which students are going to come, as Commissioner Harder mentioned. If they're going to be a student that was homeschooled and brings $9,800 in, a student that was opening and enrolling from another district that brings $7,300 in. So there's some of those costs are to be determined, but at a footprint of 28 students, we feel like we're not going to be at a loss of money for that. Like it would be a money loss.
Even if there are just students already?
Right, but that's one of those cases where we would first have a counseling session with that family, because we may be able to do some of that service within the context of our current programming that we do now.
Commissioner Torres?
Good evening. Thank you for the commentaries and the presentation. I have a few additional comments. In Article 5, governance structure, letter C, governance structure, at the end of the, not at the end, almost in the middle, when you explain the composition of the board, it says the school district directors appointed by the district superintendent or his or her designee may not be members of the Eau Claire Area School District Board. I need to understand why. In our 2 other charter schools, we have a representative from the board. Why would we choose here not to have a board representative?
I'm sorry, I was just finding the page. Can you read that one more time, the section?
Section C,
Yep.
Article 5, Section C.
Yep. What paragraph? In the second paragraph, or?
Kind of in the middle, it's all one, yeah, towards the end of the first paragraph, where it says the school district's directors appointed by the district superintendent or his or her designee may not be members of the Eau Claire Area School District Board.
I could perhaps even speak to that. I think that's saying that that's the voting board members.
Correct, yeah,
And-
there would still be
and
an ex
That's the
officio
case
member.
with all of our charter
Yeah, but it doesn't say
agreements.
It doesn't say that there.
Well, what it says there is that no member, and they're talking about voting members, voting directors at large, I think.
Is
what
there
they
going
use.
to be a board member
Right, there will be an ex
there
officio
with
member
a
of the board
voice?
to sit there,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. I just needed to
Yeah,
double check that
It'll
one.
mirror what you see in McKinley and Montessori.
Okay, thank you. Just to be consistent. A question would be, who supervises and evaluates the performance of the teacher, the virtual school teacher?
Yep, so currently, academic services will oversee this, but the virtual teachers, it's a service that you're going to be purchasing. So that particular case, we're just purchasing a service. We're not the direct supervisor of that teacher. In the case where we're going to bring in someone on an hourly basis to do some work, that person is still being supervised by another administrator in the district already. So for example, if we were to tap into the expertise of a teacher at North, that person is still supervised by one of the North administrators.
By the North, not by the virtual school principal?
Correct. Because they wouldn't be doing, that would be a very small part of their job as opposed to the majority of their job, which would be back at their school.
Okay, So they remain supervised by their building
Correct.
administrator.
Correct. And we would consult with their principal if there was any issue.
On Article 6, Section A, in general, it says that the position descriptions shall satisfy the Eau Claire Area School District Employee Handbook unless otherwise specified in a memorandum of understanding. What would that mean? This is an exception to the school, to the employee handbook.
I believe that is who's assigned to, like, so if we were to have our staff do an assignment to certain courses within that, it would be much more about the assignment. I do not read that as creating new job descriptions.
Okay, do you think it would call for an addition to the handbook language instead?
I don't feel so.
No?
Because I think you're basically saying, you know, to give an example, if we were to have one of our teachers teaching some of the social studies courses in there, it still falls under classroom teacher, which is a job description for the district already.
Okay, good. So we would have a frame to address that. Thank you. On Article 6, Section F, required hours of instruction. At the end of that short paragraph, it says no more than 10 hours in a 24 period may count towards these requirements. Is that legal?
I'd have to pull up, I don't have my computer in front of me, but I believe that might just have been pulled out of state statute language. If someone could Google that for me, or, I mean, I think that's where that came from. Yeah, okay, that's statutory language.
Okay, 10 hours.
What's that?
10 hours.
Yeah.
No more than 10 hours.
Right.
Okay.
The microphone doesn't reach your seat.
Sorry, I just happened to be reading the statute as you brought it up, so it was ironic, but the intent of the statute is so that you don't group 12 or 14 hours of instruction in one day. It is to provide, it's to enable the family and the student to be protected if there was some innocuous or some, it would be innocuous at all, would it? Some type of programming that was provided that was that much off of the norm. So the statute was written to protect the consumer from a provider that would say, hey, we're going to do 15 hours of instruction in one day to meet the minimum standards that you agreed upon at the beginning of the class.
Okay. Good, thank you. And another question connected to that is on letter G, minimum days of instruction. It says for at least 150 school days. So this is different from what we have in the other schools.
I believe that's, again, statutory language. So that's, and if you notice that that's actually referenced there as well. And the key word is at least. So it's just guaranteeing that we will not be less than that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess I was saying that the other schools offer more than 150 hours.
Right. But again, in a lot of the beauty of virtual schooling is it's asynchronous, and so it just means you're not going to drop below that. Okay. So, but students have the opportunity to be engaged actually for a significantly period greater than 150.
Yeah, okay. And it says at least. Now I get it. Thank you very
much.
Bet. And I think I have one more. I think I made a comment about this last session, but I will tweak it a little bit. When on section Article 9, Section C, participation. Number 1, it says the virtual school shall permit any student registered in any Eau Claire area school district to enroll on a full-time, part-time, or supplemental basis in any and all courses offered to students enrolled in the virtual school. What is the limit now that a student can, a limit in terms of credits that a student can take? And is that same limit going to be applied to the virtual school?
You mean an upper bound of credits? So we currently have some students that take early bird. They can take up to like 8 credits a year. And typically we would, and I can't remember if we have language in here. And do we have language in here about maximum number of credits?
No, there's no language.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that language doesn't exist in our high schools either. So we're just mirroring what we have in the schools already.
Okay, so
But-
is there a limit or is there not a limit?
You mean upper limit?
Yes.
Currently, no.
Okay.
But they're technically, for students that are in our traditional school, the brick and mortar schools, I mean, the bell schedule allows only a certain number of periods for a student to be in courses, so that's where you can get up to 8. But sometimes students can actually do an independent study or even do an online course to add to that. It's pretty atypical for students to go that much more because there's a level of rigor and expectation in a virtual and a regular course as well.
Okay, thank you. Those were all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hambach-Boyle and then Commissioner Bika.
I just wanted to clarify too, is this one of the first times as far as initiating a new alternative that $275,380 in revenue would be looked at as part of programming and because of our budget? I mean, can you connect the dots on that
You
one?
mean, like, would that help pay
Yes.
for the programming?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Page 10, the title of Article 8. In the paragraph, you added socioeconomic.
Correct.
Would you consider adding it to the title as well?
We can, and actually, if we do make any changes, we did check on this tonight, we actually would not have to bring it back here. If the virtual board were to vote on any changes you make tonight, so in other words, if you say we want this change made, and then we port that back to the virtual board, if they accept it as is, then that's the end, and it's a contract. So if you do that, though, you would have to, in the motion, make that amendment if you would like to have that in there. Does that make sense? Because that would be part of what you approve.
Okay. Are there other board member questions at this time? I just want to thank the exec team, Teaching and Learning, Drew Sevland. I don't think Drew is here, but
He's at home with a sick child.
well, I want to give him a shout out if he's watching us for all of his work on this, as well as the many parents and community members who are involved with, either were involved early in the planning or who are involved now with the group. I will be enthusiastically supporting this contract and pilot tonight for a variety of reasons, and I just want to go through them briefly. I think that this program brings us closer to our goals of meeting the needs of all students with diverse methods of learning. And of course, this would allow us the ability to connect with a variety of students and families who simply have never been a part of the ECASD. For the many students, families who opt out to open enroll into virtual programs, this would allow them the opportunity to still have that learning method, but maintain a local option and maintain connection to the school district. It would allow the opportunity for a lot of our regional homeschooling families to be brought into the fold for really the first time, which whenever we have our district book sales at like the board office, I will sometimes be in the building and I will meet homeschool families because they will come to the district book sales. And whenever that has taken place over the last few years, I have always felt in my heart like, oh, how awesome it would be to have that person and her 3 kids that she's with right now be a part of our school district beyond this couple times a year. You know, and I think that that goes to how this our district through this can provide curriculum, lesson plans, and eliminate a lot of the need for homeschooling families to independently procure resources, which I know can be really difficult. And I think it would also provide a mechanism for our district to virtually open its doors to children and families in all corners of the state, thus expanding two things: our footprint in general, and also our financial leverage to see a balanced open enrollment system, hopefully, down the road, and maybe even a potential financial net gain open enrollment system down the road. So I will be enthusiastically voting yes to approve of this contract and pilot tonight for the 2019-20 school year. But I would be open to the one amendment that Commissioner Bika has suggested to be a part of that motion, as I would expect that the virtual board wouldn't have an issue with renaming that area.
I would agree.
Okay. Are there any other board comments or questions at this time? Yes, Commissioner Humbuck-Boyle.
I just wanted to reiterate and agree with you, Joe, that with the number of enrollments out and the connection, I've always wanted to connect with the homeschooling community as well in a bigger footprint. So I think that's a strong part of this program.
Commissioner Bika, would you mind giving me the area that you were suggesting, what section? Article 8, title to, and what would it say? Okay. Okay. So, with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the contract between Eau Claire Virtual Charter School, Inc. and the ECASD School Board with the one amendment on page 10, Article 8, to add socioeconomic to the title. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Harder. Is there a second? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bika. And we will do is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bika?
Yes.
Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Harder?
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Commissioner Luganbill?
Yes.
Commissioner Torres?
Yes.
Commissioner Boo?
Yes.
Thank you, and that motion carries 7-0. All right, and that ends our part of the agenda with our individually considered resolutions and brings us now adjourning to our committee reports and items for discussion. And our first item on the agenda tonight is the Demographic Trends and Facility Planning Committee updates and recommendations. And we have, thank you for coming back, even though we slighted you last time. I felt, oh, you never left. We do have a comfortable staff lounge, and we do have a...
Good evening. So Phil Lyons, Committee Chair of the Demographic Trends and Facilities Planning Committee, is here with me tonight. And we would like to share with you information about the listening sessions as well as a recommendation from the Demo and Trends Committee moving forward. So the Demographic Trends and Facility Planning Committee consists of community members from across the district. They really represent quite a few different backgrounds and all different areas of the district. You can see those who are asterisked joined our committee in December of 2018. These folks really have spent countless hours studying data, examining possible solutions, weighing options, and ultimately making a recommendation for you tonight. The charge of the committee is that we will at least annually provide recommendations to you regarding demographic trends, boundary issues, capacity updates, and other relevant information. So that is one of the things that we're doing today. You may remember that the committee shared with you in the fall a few options regarding 4K and elementary facilities for long-term planning around equity and safety. And there were 3 potential solutions that would meet the needs of the entire district. Option 1, if we start from left to right, Option 1 was to develop a plan to repurpose Roosevelt as a 4K center, including a facility upgrade to meet that need. We'd reestablish boundaries absorbing Roosevelt students into other schools, other surrounding schools, so that Roosevelt could become a 4K center. And then we would develop a facility plan to address capacity issues on the South Side Elementary School and eventually change boundaries once that facility plan was implemented in those areas as well. Option 2 includes the 2016 recommendation from the committee to replace Roosevelt with a 3 to 4 section school. Boundaries on the north side would be retained with this option. This plan would also call for the district to develop a separate plan for dealing with capacity issues at Prairie Ridge and a facility plan to address capacity issues on the South Side Elementary Schools with potential or definite boundary changes in that area once the facility plan was firmed up. And those actually were the only 2 recommendations that the committee presented to you. The third recommendation came from the community. And that third recommendation is all the way over on the right-hand side. Community members asked us to consider what would happen if we retained Roosevelt as a 2-section school. So a school that only has 2 classes of each grade level, 2 kindergarten, 2 first grade. So the community asked if we would study this option, and this option would develop a plan to address capacity on the northern part of the district, but retain Roosevelt as an elementary site with 2 sections. It would include reestablishing boundaries in order to balance enrollments, and a facility plan for Roosevelt to kind of bring it up to speed as an elementary school. The plan would also call for the district to develop a separate plan for dealing with capacity issues at Prairie Ridge, and to develop a separate plan for the capacity issues that we see on the southern part of the district. So the board charged the committee with holding several listening sessions. And I want to spend some time today talking about what was shared at those listening sessions, both by me and by community members. We held 7 listening sessions in February and March of 2019. Each session provided a history of the committee and the recommendations and the current recommendation before the board. We then looked more in depth at a focused topic, and you can see those topics listed on the left-hand side of this chart here. Just to refresh your memory a little bit, I want to share what was presented to the community members during these sessions. This map here shows each of our schools within the district, and each of the elementary schools within the district. And you can see, based on the color coding on the right-hand side, that if the bell in that boundary area is green, it means that that school is under 65% capacity. Bells that are yellow are between 70 to 75% capacity. We would call those schools, they would have room to grow. The green ones are under capacity. The pink schools are comfortable. They range between 80 and 89% capacity. And then those that are red represent the schools right now that we're concerned about. They're 90% capacity or higher. Based on community feedback, this slide really changed throughout each of the listening sessions. One of the things that we were asked often was, could we shift boundaries entirely from throughout the entire district? So this slide was used to illustrate how the schools that we're really concerned about, which would be the red schools and the green schools, red being overcapacity and green being able to welcome students, where they were in relation to one another. So one of the challenges between Mans, Putnam, and Meadowview is that the schools that are in close proximity to those 3 are also red. So if we shift students from Mans, Meadowview, or Putnam to a nearby school, we're either shifting those students to another red school, or we're shifting them to a pink school, which is then going to turn red because we shifted students there. On the other hand, if we look at Roosevelt, which is the red school in the northern part of the district, you can see surrounding it, we have green and yellow schools, which are schools that have room to welcome students. So we used this to try to illustrate that situation with community members. The issue with 90% or more capacity is really compounded when we looked at confirmed developments throughout the city. This was information that the community had asked for within the process. So as a result, the Demographics and Trends Committee really looked at where are the developments, and we used this to show where confirmed developments were within the Eau Claire School District. We asked city planners and township clerks for each of the towns in our districts, and the dots here show where we have confirmed developments throughout the district. You can see if you are a Roosevelt family, there's lots of development by Roosevelt. That's a school that's over 90% capacity, and there's development, which is one of the causes for concern. You can also see if you look at the Putnam, the Meadowview, and the Mans attendance areas, there's lots of development in those sections of the district as well, which also raises some concern. Well, we have developments in the outer areas of the district. The central part of the district is really challenging for the Demographic and Trends Committee. You can see here the central part of our district. There are 9 elementary schools in this area. One of them is Montessori. Although community members frequently asked why boundaries weren't shifted throughout the district, this map here illustrates one of the reasons why that's a challenge. To put things into perspective, on this map, the distance between Longfellow in the center and Flynn to the south of it is 2.4 miles. Between Flynn and Mans is 1.3 miles. On this map, what looks like a long distance between Sam Davy and Roosevelt is 3.4 miles. So redrawing boundaries in this area becomes very difficult for the Demographic and Trends Committee. By literally shifting a boundary by 1 or 2 miles, a student can move from one attendance area through another attendance area and into a third attendance area. On one hand, it makes boundaries harder to balance, and on the other, it can make a school that is really nearby seem kind of far away when you look at it in this way. You can also see that in the small area of our district that all 3 of our middle schools are represented with the colored dots. As we balanced boundary areas such as the 3rd Ward, middle school and high school boundaries became important discussions during the listening sessions. For example, the 3rd Ward is close to 5 of our elementary schools. 2 of those schools feed south. 2 of them feed DeLong, but that only adds up to 4. Oh, because the other one's Montessori, which feeds all of them. At the same time, we just committed to high school boundary changes, and we didn't want to change them. So that was a challenge that the committee faced. We also shared the number of seats that were remaining until schools were at 100% capacity. This information was shared with you in the fall as well. You can see here that if the schools in the northern half of the district were filled 100% to capacity, there are about 850 seats remaining. On the southern part of the district, schools, if they were filled to 100% capacity, had about 271 seats remaining. The schools that are highlighted in red are schools that are already at 90% capacity. So you can see they don't have very much room to welcome additional students. For example, Roosevelt can welcome about 31 students before it's at 100% capacity. During the listening sessions, community members wondered about this slide in particular and said, really this contradiction in the committee has said, we have a red flag at 90%. Why are you sharing what the capacity would look like at 100%? So we changed this to show what it would look like until schools are at 90% capacity. And so here you can see that the schools that were at or around 90%, Roosevelt is already over that number, Mans and Meadowview are over that number. Putnam Heights can welcome one more student before they're over that number. So when we do this, of the schools that are in the southern part of the district, Flynn has 4 seats before it's at 90% capacity, and Robbins has 57 seats. And in contrast, in the northern part of the district, you can see the schools in total would have 568 seats until we're at 90% capacity. During each of the listening sessions, information about 4K facility needs was also shared. You can see here that the original suggestion to use Roosevelt as an additional 4K site really came from 2 converging facts. One is that the Demo and Trends Committee recommended that Roosevelt be closed. You can see that up on the top. And the second was that the district continues to face larger demand for 4K programming at Prairie Ridge than the capacity will allow. And so with that, the recommendation was to repurpose Roosevelt as a 4K site. If you've read the frequently asked questions document, you know that community members asked a lot of questions about 4K programming at the district level, at the state level, and at the federal level. In many ways, this portion of the plan continues to be a moving target. So I want to give you some dates and talk to you a little bit about how that target is moving. We've been told by the DPI this fall, in the fall of 2018, to begin planning for all-day 4K programming. And we know federally that extended duration, which is all-day Head Start programming, was slated to be in place by 2021 for all Head Start students. Head Start students, by the way, are required to be served at Prairie Ridge. They cannot go to our community sites. You may have recently read, however, that there's currently a motion at the federal level to eliminate the all-day extended duration requirement, and obviously that would impact this portion of the plan. At the same time, we have 100 students who wanted to attend Prairie Ridge this year, but weren't able to because of capacity issues. So those students are served in our community sites, but their family's first choice was Prairie Ridge. So it's just kind of this tricky piece that keeps moving for us within the recommendation. We did have a session on what does it look like to transition a student or your family between schools. This was another frequent concern from families at the listening sessions, and really their concern was how do boundary changes or switching schools impact our students. This slide shows that some of the information that was shared with families. Academically, we know that students are not impacted by boundary changes. There has been study and research in this regard. Although academic might dip the year of a school closing or a boundary change is the year that it's announced, 1 year after moving to a new school, studies show that students who move regain their achievement levels that are equivalent to the students who did not move. This is true for students in all areas, general education, special education, English language learners, and so on. Whoops. Another concern is, and probably more importantly, is how does this impact the social emotional development of students? Research in this area consistently shows that student emotions and social success with a change will mirror the emotions and success and social success of the adults. And although boundary changes are an emotional topic for adults, it's important for us to model emotional regulation for children who are going through a boundary change. We also know that relationships with teachers play an important role in the success of any transition. It's essential for staff to be extra diligent about building relationships with students during those transition years, and that takes a lot of careful planning and will require some extra attention from district staff. For most students, the research shows that the transition to a new school takes about 6 weeks. In those first 6 weeks, it wouldn't be unusual for families to see tears, to have children that worry, who are sad, who grieve, and have other very valid emotions in a transition. After 6 weeks, though, families typically notice their child returning to a more typical pattern of behavior. We talked with families that if the transition at 6 months, if you still notice that transition, it would be something that you would want to bring to the attention of adults so that extra support could be offered for those students. Each listening session, we had several administrators in attendance to be around the table with community members. The administrators recorded and answered questions from community members. Community members were also provided an exit slip where questions and suggestions could be added. If community members left their contact information, we called or emailed with a response to each one of their questions. We also added their questions to the frequently asked questions document. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and take a peek at it. It's on the website. You can see on the right here some of the questions that were more frequently asked than others. For example, the most common question we had was, will my child be grandfathered into any changes? We don't have an answer to that yet. We're really waiting for a board decision before we work out some of those details, but that's a wondering of community members. The second most frequently asked question was, why aren't boundaries being shifted as an entire district? Which is why some of those challenges with surrounding schools being red or pink, as well as that central district, was a topic of conversation. Folks were curious about where our cost estimates came from, and why we would shift elementary students rather than simply place 4K students in some of our open facilities. So we addressed some of those questions. You can see the other questions that we also had, as well as looking at the website if you were curious about those. In the fall, President Luganville, you indicated to community members, we really would like your help in looking for some solutions to the situation that we were in. So during each session, we also asked community members for their input and their solutions, and they really fell into one of 4 categories. One was building and repurposing schools, and you can see some of the suggestions up there. The number after it is how many times. That was an idea that was shared with the committee. So for example, build and repurpose a Southside school. We heard that 4 times. Rebuild and upgrade Roosevelt was a suggestion 3 times. Reopen Little Red came up a couple of times. There were also suggestions about boundary changes, shifting students in the southern part of the district to the northern part of the district was one that was most frequently asked or suggested 5 times. Adjust all school boundaries was also frequently asked. That came on 3 exit slips. You can see the other boundary change suggestions there. There were lots of ideas about 4K programming, which you can see here. Do not provide another 4K site. Instead, provide transportation to all of our current sites. Expand private 4K, find a different location for 4K. And then there were some that just didn't really fit in either of the previous 3, which you can see here. Let parents decide which school to attend to balance capacity issues. They wanted to see Demo and Trends committee members at listening sessions as well as board members at listening sessions. So this information was shared with Demographics and Trends, the Demo and Trends committee, and the committee took that information as well as the data that we had and followed up with the recommendation that you're going to hear tonight, and Phil Lyons is going to take it from here to share that recommendation.
All right, thank you. As a reminder, and you've seen this slide before, these are the 3 options that are before you tonight. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on each one of them, but very quickly. The first one, the 6 elementary schools and Roosevelt as a 4K, was the original recommendation that the committee brought to you. The second recommendation, 7 elementary schools with an expanded Roosevelt, was the 2016 recommendation that the board rescinded. And the third, 7 elementary schools with a 2-section Roosevelt, was an option that a community member developed, but it's an option in front of the board. And we are going to tell you that the committee's going to recommend one of these tonight. Drum roll. Yep, so let's go with option 1 first. So the 6 schools with the dual immersion. As you can see, with on March 18th of 2019, this board voted to approve the dual immersion program, and that was at Longfellow. The committee had drawn potential boundary maps for 2 different scenarios, one with dual immersion and one without. With that March 18th vote, the committee had 2 proposed sets of maps to examine at our meetings. So this is the proposed map with option 1, which was repurposing Roosevelt as a 4K site, and it redraws the boundaries for the surrounding schools. So drafting the boundaries was a very difficult task. There was times it made my head hurt. And while the committee wanted to find a potential solution for this scenario, you can see that within these boundaries, the capacity numbers just really don't work very well. Sam Davies at 92%. As you heard Kim say, that's in the area of concern. Lakeshore is not too far behind at 89. And then Longfellow, with that dual immersion program, goes from 87 to 93 to 97 to 102% capacity. So well over the overcapacity limits. So as a result, the committee is not recommending the original solution or the original proposal that we did bring to you previously. With the inclusion of the dual immersion, the numbers just didn't work for us. We could not plan out the movement that dual immersion would create and then try to balance those boundaries around the elementary. So the first option is not one that the committee felt that they could recommend. So option 2, that was first drafted, as I said, in 2016. And the option called for the replacement of Roosevelt with a 3 to 4 section school. And as a reminder, our principles really drive us that if we're going to repurpose or renovate a building, that it be a 3 or 4 section facility. So this was an expanded Roosevelt with a 3 to 4 section as a 3 or 4 section. So Kim shared with you earlier tonight the Bell map, and it identifies, as she said, those schools that are under capacity in green and the schools that are over capacity in red. So what the committee felt that an expanded Roosevelt would do was create a 3-section school near other schools that were under capacity. And so it did not make sense to our committee to expand a school that was sitting in such close proximity to Locust Lane, which was at 54% capacity. So for this, the committee really still stands by its decision to rescind this. We didn't think it made good sense, good fiscal sense. So again, we agree that that option should have been rescinded, and we stand by that decision. So now option 3 includes keeping Roosevelt open, but as a 2-section school. This was a suggestion that was really brought by a committee member, by a community member, not a committee member. And as you can see, here's what the new boundaries would look like. The solution was, again, brought by a community member, and the map's modified from other maps that you'll find on the website. The suggestion was that we closely examine the 2 potential areas labeled Neighborhood 10 and Neighborhood 11, which is in that kind of central corridor that Kim was referring to earlier. And by placing those neighborhoods within the Roosevelt area, the capacity at each of the schools on this map then fall within the guidelines of the committee. So as you can see here, the capacities all fall in that area that's really a comfort zone. We have Roosevelt at 79%, Locust Lane rises up from the 54 to almost 70. Longfellow's a dual immersion. Sam Davies at that almost 80% capacity. Sherman near 80. Lakeshore at 80. Northwoods at 80. It's really at those numbers that we felt very good about. And while that option does not doesn't solve some of the issues that our first recommendation brought, which also dealt with the 4K and also the South Side, we felt that this was the best option of the three, and it was one that was brought by a community member. So we, as a committee, are forwarding the third recommendation. And given the current enrollments, that's the option that the committee recommends that the board would approve. The committee also recommends that this plan begin in the 2021 school year so that the administration has some time to develop a transition and a support plan for students and families. The committee would also like the board to note, as I said, that, or that's in this graph, that there are some expenses to this. So $2 million to $3 million would need to be put into the deferred maintenance at Roosevelt. In addition, the capacity issues at the Southside Elementary from other estimates are $16 to $18 million expense. And to address capacity issues at the 4K, there was estimates of $13 to $14.5 million. The committee recognized that these costs are above what can be addressed within the current budget, but given the data, the projections, and the current enrollments, the committee's confident and very comfortable in that plan. And there was one additional request that the committee asked for me to bring forward. And I've spent about a little bit over 3 years on the committee. And when I first joined the committee, there was ever-present board members that attended the group. And that value, that communication back and forth, for the members that also are longer-term folks, it was really invaluable. But what I think we have now is the committee feels like no board members attending our committee meetings is dismissive of our work. And there's individuals that actually are wondering in the committee whether or not the work is valued. And so I am bringing forward to you what I've heard from other committee members that they would really appreciate to solidify the work that's being done, that we reclassify the committee as a committee of the board, and that 2 board members be assigned to our group. So I'm forwarding on those feelings for what it's worth. Committee next steps. We do not believe that our work is complete. These are some of the things that we believe are kind of obvious next steps. Of course, wait the board approval of the elementary facilities recommendation. We believe that we need to very much look at and determine the impact that these recommendations have on the middle school boundaries and give this board any recommendations that we find that some of these boundary changes, some unintended consequences. To study 4K and elementary expansion options to make a future recommendation to the board. And finally, to await appointment of board members to the committee. And with that, we would entertain any questions.
Thank you. Could you go to the second to last slide? Just back to the one right before. Thanks. Commissioner Vu, did you have a? Oh, your light's on. And other board member questions, comments? Commissioner Harder?
Yeah, I just thanks very much for this work, this tough work. And I'm interested in just understanding a little bit better about this, the recommended path here, 7 elementary schools with 2 Section Roosevelt. And the cost estimate of addressing the capacity issues in the elementary schools, 16 to 18 million. What is the nature of that, and also the nature of the 4K? Is there where do those numbers come from? What is the sort of plan?
Those were estimates that retired facility director Larry Summerfeld did give to us. That is looking at the projected trends that are on the south side, south of 94, and there was an earlier slide about some of the proposed developments that are going up. And if you look at those red bells, you'll see that they're all over 90%. So we are, I think the school district is in something of a precarious position in the fact that if we see a population jump, we don't have places to put the kids. And so that 14 to the 16 to 18 million is an addition to Mans. It's addition to one of the South Side elementaries to deal with what we're seeing is as a growth largely due to the availability of land.
So it would be a cost of, say, moving an existing 3-section to a 4-section or something of that nature, or?
So the committee didn't go into that level of detail. Larry gave us really a couple of options with that funding. One was an entirely new school in that area, and then reshift boundaries to balance the enrollment once that school is built. And the other was for an addition, or an addition or 2, depending on where it was needed. And given the dollar amount, one of the next steps that the committee would need to do is look at the feasibility of each of those. So that would be one of our next steps. And then the star by the 4K capacity issues is really, that just signifies the moving target piece. So we know that Governor Evers had in his biennial budget all-day 4K. And we know that we've been told to prepare for it, but we also know that extended duration just a couple of weeks ago was going to go from a requirement to an option, so we might need to see where things land with that.
And then, so time frame for, and I see that as part of the plan is, let's flesh that out. The 4K question, the elementary question is on your second to last slide there, I think. But what is, in terms of the time frame, do we have a sense of how soon this would need to be, these changes would need to be made?
That's a great question. There's probably a number of options that could be looked at, and I think that the next slide talks about one of the next steps being us really taking a look at all of the options that are in fact available there. The Demo Trends Committee really identified 3 things that we really need to focus on. And one was Roosevelt, because of the maintenance issues of that school. We've got to do something with it, right? The second is the South Side and some of the trends that we're seeing and developments that are occurring down there, and the other is the 4K. Prairie Ridge has done such an amazing job at being able to address that finding another solution that's very much along the lines of what Prairie Ridge is providing for the community is something that I think needs a lot of brainstorming.
That's great, thank you. So, I mean, we obviously, all of these paths have had costs involved, varying costs as we see. But the nature of these costs we have a sense of, but it's going to take more study to really know for sure. So just to be clear, what we're voting on tonight, are we voting tonight? We're not voting tonight, pardon me. Okay, well, good then. So, but this, regardless, that would be still a future concern. Presumably we'd be voting at some point to move forward with one of these options, but without some of those details some of those details would yet to be determined, right?
We know that each of the needs listed on here is urgent.
Yeah.
We also know that for the past several years in the Roosevelt attendance area in particular, we have had a Plan B in place because there is not enough room to serve all of the students in that attendance area. So we know that the reestablishment of elementary boundaries is something that we could do now, and that part of the plan could be addressed and then dive in depth. I think the secured entrance deferred maintenance, this isn't something that's in the 5-year capital budget. Neither is the capacity issues on the south side or Prairie Ridge.
Yeah.
So we anticipate those things will probably take a little bit more time. But the establishment of boundaries is something that we could do short term.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Humbuck-Boyle.
As I go off the board, I just want to ask, and thank you for your work, and Phil to be on there for 3 years. That's just amazing. But it's an amazing volunteer piece that you did for us, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've been approached a couple times, and I don't even know by who. I'm just going to throw this out to Demo and Trends in the sense that when we did the boundaries for our high schools, and we did open enrollment to North, I wonder if it would be appropriate to reflect on that a little bit now that we've had some time, because I hear the enrollments between the high schools are getting pretty close, and also we're losing some enrollments because we have people from Mondovi, Durand that want to possibly come in, but they won't drive the extra distance. So I don't know. I would think it'd be important to see if that's an economic impact on our district if we reflect on that now after some time. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Torres.
I have a logistical question. In your deliberation as a committee, I understand this comes from a community member, right? The one that you recommend.
Yes, it does.
Have you had a chance to compare that or enrich that with the proposal that another community member is making, suggesting that there are ways to have a lesser or lower impact in terms of boundary changes?
I don't think you've seen it. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I have not seen the proposal that you're referencing.
Would it be possible to invite Kelly Hendrickson to Demo and Trends meeting to
She's usually there.
listen to her proposal in detail for boundaries?
Would you please come to our meeting? Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And if I may, just two sort of ideas to consider as a board. First of all, again, we're at a situation where it is clear for us that we need to somehow find the opportunity to work together with the city of Eau Claire. Because when they decide that the city is going to grow somewhere, somehow, we are left off the process. And their decisions cause great stress on our very limited budget. So it would be a good idea to make that effort and sit down and plan for the next 10 years so that we can act responsibly. And the second one is, in the same sense, Prairie Ridge is doing a wonderful job. I agree, and that's wonderful. Yet at the same time, when we are not able to provide the same service to all the 4K kids, then we are also creating an inequitable situation, because those who can benefit from Prairie Ridge will have more likely have a successful elementary education compared to those who cannot. So perhaps it's time for us to sit down and think about a comprehensive plan to offer a 4K universally. And not next year, not in 2 years, probably, but we need to start thinking about that plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Torres. I would agree too that the, you know, as we look at the other two items of the four, the two bottom ones about obviously the capacity issues, that'll require, I think, a lot more conversation. And the 4K piece, I think, especially looking at a comprehensive plan out in the community as it relates to 4K, because we obviously have so many community partners, dozens upon dozens, not only providers, but agencies that are funded in part by government also. And so talking through where we're all at, what is the need, and I think that almost every time that we bring up 4K at a board meeting, a couple weeks go on and then something changes that we hear at the state level or federal level. There's a new press release that goes out, there's something new in the budget. So I think we're kind of in an ambiguous place with that. So having a big sit down, I think, would be helpful. As far as I have two questions for you. What brought you to the decision to do a 1-year buffer as opposed to right away in the coming fall? And was it, I'm assuming it was mainly because of the policy we put in place like last year, that now that's really the benchmark, is that we provide a year notice? Was that
Administrative.
Yeah. You want me to talk a little bit about it? Yes, and there is a lot of, to help students transition smoothly, takes a lot of TLC and coordination.
Right.
What we would like to be able to do is allow the administrators and the families at the schools impacted to work together in order to facilitate a transition that allows the students to get to know a new peer group at a new school and allows the families to get to know the new school as well.
Thank you. The only other question I have is, maybe it's a clarification, the piece about adding committee members back. I remember when that conversation took place, and it was when we, after we appointed our board committee memberships, and the conversation came up about the many, many committees that board members were sitting on. And so we actually changed our policy on committees to take off that committee. So we would have to, we can't just assign, but we would have to change our policy if that was something that the board would want to reconsider and do. I don't recall how that discussion went necessarily. I just remember that it happened, and we kind of decided that would be something that we would take off for now, and rotate and have people try to go as they could. I don't know how much that's taken place over the last several months since we've done this. I know I went to one meeting. I don't know if others have gone. I'm sure others have. But that's certainly something I think we could consider as a board, is adding perhaps one member back, because I think that we, as a board, we are pretty strapped for time, it seems, right now. Pretty stretched, kind of thin. There's only 7 of us, and we have a lot of committees, and we've created new committees in the last year, I think, 2. So, yeah. But I don't know if other board members have thoughts on that. Maybe just to provide a little clarification on how we're feeling on that piece. Commissioner Bika?
So I was the last, one of the last board members to be assigned before we made the change, and maybe it's something we could talk about as we go on and have a broader conversation about the governance structure. I actually felt you didn't need me because committee members were so competent. So I was actually surprised, and I want to apologize if that you feel your work hasn't been valued, because from my perspective it was really quite the contrary.
That's wonderful to hear. What I felt that you had the benefit of hearing is some of the feelings of the people that are volunteering their time. And they're working very hard, and I just wanted to be able to communicate to you what some of the things that they're feeling, and that they really would like to have board engagement with this committee. And I hope that can happen.
Okay. Did you have something, Chris? No? Okay. Is there anything else on any of these items? So I'm following. Are you looking to have the board vote on the issue of the committee thing? We'll have to talk about through policy and governance and looking at policy 185 and modifying that if we choose to do that. The piece about this, beginning in 2020-21, particularly really those two kind of first, I would assume those two kind of first ones is what we're talking about initially. Are you looking to have it, when is the latest that you're looking to have a decision made by?
We have a meeting on May 18th. 16th?
I think 16 is Thursday.
Okay.
So we were hoping to have some sort of board direction and decision about a month from today.
Okay.
So that we know what, as a committee, our next steps are in the process.
So we have a board meeting on May 6th, which is when we seat our new board, May 20th. So perhaps we can figure out maybe doing more discussion in one and vote in the other, or figuring that out. It sounds like there's some additional questions, though, of things that we could talk through between now and the next board meeting. Some more fact-finding and discussion with perhaps some parent stakeholders. And so if there's any board members who have questions that they'd like or clarification, who would you like? Would you like it to go directly to you, Ms. Kohler, or Dr. Hardebeck, or where would you send them to Dr. Hardebeck? All right. So if anyone has additional clarifications or questions. Yeah, Commissioner Hammock-Bowe.
I just wanted to kind of clarify the 4K thing. We have universal 4K in Eau Claire. We have 21 community sites, and then we have Prairie Ridge. When we started the program, in our community sites, it's a certain amount of money per child. It's $2,500. We started 4K over 10 years ago, and that amount of money has not changed. So I think when we started 4K, we had a community group, not just district, but our 4K partners, but also other people in the community that were part of a group that met. And that might be what you might want to reestablish to have those conversations. Because if it's thought that Prairie Ridge is universal 4K and not our community sites, then we have to see what the equity is there and why that might appear that way, because it really shouldn't be. So, thank you.
I just need to clarify.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms.
Can I-
Kohler? Yeah.
Can I just clarify timeline?
Yes.
So between now and the next board meeting, the committee does not meet.
Yeah.
So if we were looking for a vote to provide direction for committee next steps, so what I have is May 6th, next board meeting, May 16th, demo and trends, and then May 23rd, board meeting. So my question is,
May 23rd is a Thursday.
oh, I'm sorry, you're right, it is.
We're talking
May 20th.
Yeah.
So my question is, just regarding the order, we have Kelly's proposal. Would you like a work group to look at that before May 6th and report out? Would you like the whole committee to look at that on May 16th and report out, but then a decision wouldn't be made until June?
I guess, I think what Commissioner Torres was asking with respect to the email that we got this morning for public disclosure, is that we can kind of cross-track, see how that relates to the option 3, how it doesn't, see what the differences are, if there's anything from that we can work with. So I don't know if that necessarily takes a huge subgroup, but certainly you and Mr. Lyons and perhaps Commissioner Torres, since you brought it up, if you'd like to be there, I could certainly come. But I'm not. That's just one topic that one board member brought up. So if there are additional questions board members have, things that we want to make sure we're aware of or we've checked on before the next meeting when we discuss this again, I think we'll handle it that way, though, with a small group kind of thing, if that works. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So thank you very much for all of your work, and please pass along to your committee that thank you. We appreciate it.
Sorry, I'm staying up
We
here.
value them very much.
I'm going to leave. All right.
Thank you. Oh, yes, this is a committee item, so if members of the public have questions, they can go up to the podium and state any questions they may have. Okay, I don't see anyone. So that brings us then to our next agenda item, which is update from the Equity Review Committee for athletics and facility use for ECASD events.
Hello. So Lynette and I are here today to talk with you about an equity committee that you formed. Actually, it was last year around this time. An equity committee was formed on facility use. And we'd like to report out what the committee worked on as far as ECASD users. The Equity Review Committee, the charge of the committee is up here. It was created for the purpose of identifying issues of equity, access, and consistency in athletic programs and related to facility use, and to make recommendations to the school board. Although the work of the committee focused on facility use, we do know that participation in extra and co-curricular activities support the mission and vision of the district. The work of this committee really aligns with the strategic plan in the areas of academic achievement, social emotional growth, and partnerships with the family and community. Lynette Hesse and Bob Crone chaired the committee, and what I'd like to do right now is introduce Lynette and have her share the work of the committee with you tonight.
Thank you for your time. Like Kim mentioned, our committee met some time ago, back on January 18th, I believe it was. We presented our first half of our recommendation. So today I just want to kind of go back over the second part. And as we met quite a few times, we had a couple reoccurring themes, and we decided to focus most of our time on those. And those two themes were feedback on substandard customer service, and then also the well-intended policy with unintended consequences. And one of the examples that we have that came up is on our north side, we have a Husky Hoops Club, and they always have a Husky Hoops Night that, gosh, the last one was in January, I bet. And we had about 25 fourth graders participate in that. They got to wear their jerseys to the game and sit right behind the varsity bench and cheer on those older teammates. And for a fourth grade basketball player, that is awesome to hang out with those high schoolers. So the entire experience left the kids and the players and the parents and the hundreds of community members with a good feeling about the school and the district. But unfortunately, so then they've done that for every home game over the last 4 years. This winter, the president of the Husky Hoops Club was contacted by the district questioning what was the hoops night at North High School. They had thought that maybe someone had tried to reserve that gym time and saw it on the schedule. So unfortunately, this was one of those customer service type of issues that kind of left everybody with a bad taste in their mouth. And it kind of gave that perception that the district wasn't working with the community on that facility aspect. So as you see before you, in January, we presented, we're viewing the facility use, which is policy 830, I believe. And last time we really focused on the community events. And tonight we want to look at this recommendation based on Eau Claire School District events. So we define those facility use for the district in the activities. We're going to change the focus area on aligning the policy and practice and defining expectations and autonomy for coaches. Okay, so what do we define as an Eau Claire School District event? As you can see from up here, we've defined those as any use of the facilities for the primary purpose of athletic teams or school clubs, PTOs or PTAs, booster clubs. We have active alumni associations or any in-season sports camps. We really wanted to make sure that as we were looking at the facility use agreement, we found several instances where the rules were explicitly stated and then exceptions to these rules, and we felt like those undermined each other. The committee felt that it has complicated the process and decreased the perception of customer service. So in making recommendations, our goal simplifies the process in order to improve customer service and align with the policy and practice. For example, you can't read all the fine writing here, but some of the contracts or the facility use says that you can't have food and drinks in the gymnasium, but any of you who've gone to a varsity or JV event at our schools know you can buy at the concession and bring those food in. So those were just not consistent across the board. Also, over the past several years, there's been some comment about hosting camps and clinics. It's gotten really complicated within our system. So the district has focused on moving as many camps and clinics to summer school in the effort to remove some of those barriers. The committee recognized the value of this. So as we examined the current agreement, however, it seemed that it really became overly complicated. This is just many steps of the 20 requirements outlined for camps and clinics. So in order to make that customer service a little bit more seamless and better, and to remove some of the unintended consequences, the committee would like to recommend 3 changes related to camps and clinics. And they're listed up here. We want all camps and clinics should follow the facility use for the Eau Claire Area School District events, and that school year camps and clinics shall be conducted during hours of scheduled custodial coverage, or groups shall pay for the additional custodial overtime if held during the times where the custodians are not on their normal schedule. And then all other guidelines for camps and clinics be placed in the coaches section of the employee handbook. All right. So we were also looking at district employees as supervisors. So in the current facility use agreement, it states that for all events, a custodian or employee designated by the director of the buildings and grounds. While we believe it's important that a staff member be present, the committee felt that there were other areas that should be addressed as well, particularly in relation to student safety. So in this area, the committee recommends that an Eau Claire School District employee be present at all practices or events. This could include a custodian or a contracted coach or a contracted advisor. And that to ensure the safety of students, the contracted coach or advisor is required to stay at school until all students are picked up or have left the campus. At games or type performance, we also recommend that the administrator or designee be present. This requirement would allow the advisor or coach to focus on the game or performance, while the administrator or designee can focus on the safety of the spectators. Okay, we spent 90% of our time, maybe that's an exaggeration, we spent a good portion of our time in this committee's work discussing the holidays with the current agreement. Right now you can see that the district recognized holidays are listed on the slide projector there. And we really felt that this was a big portion of, we understood the intent of this policy, but unfortunately in the practice of this there were unintended consequences. So this is one of the portions that we are going to give for suggestion for change in the facility use agreement. The unintended consequences and the exceptions to the rule were discussed lengthily by the committee. For example, student athletes and parents shared that on some of these holidays, such as the Friday after Thanksgiving, student athletes are renting community gyms and holding their own practices. And we felt that these practice opportunities that are unsupervised by coach concerned the committee members as a safety issue. The committee also heard from coaches across the district. We ran a little informal kind of poll, and while the majority of the coaches understood the intent was to guarantee family time for not only the student athlete but the coaches and the custodians, the coaches shared many examples of how the current agreement distracts from family time. For example, over a long holiday weekend such as Memorial Day and Labor Day, and these two holidays in particular really come into play because there aren't currently the policy doesn't allow you to hold practice on Monday due to those holidays. However, the teams can practice on Saturdays or Sundays of those weekends. All the coaches, athletes, and parents all agreed that this is in contradictory to the intent. Practicing late in the day on the evening of Labor Day or Memorial Day would allow more family times for Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, and also really most of the day on Monday. So by allowing practice on Sunday and Saturday, we're breaking up the opportunities for families to have a long weekend together. So in the current facility use agreement, it states that all events, whoops, I forgot to turn my page.
Which one are you on?
I am on, yes.
This one over here. There you go.
Oh, thanks, Kim. I guess we're all getting tired. So the committee spent hours talking about the holidays. And so one of our recommendations is that middle school and coaches and advisors shall not schedule events on the defined holidays. We had a lot of discussion about this, really talking about the middle school level and intent of sports and extracurriculars at that time. So we felt that this scheduling was much less complex than the high school, and so we are making the recommendation that the middle school continue to recognize those holidays. But at the high school level, the recommendation of the committee is to change the facility use agreement, and our recommendation is listed up there on the slide. We gave a lot of consideration to the feedback of families, coaches, student athletes, and the Policy and Governance Committee. And to be honest with the full board, our viewpoints were just very different. So in relation to the district holidays at the high school level, the committee recommends that high school coaches and advisors be allowed to schedule events on defined holidays with approval of their direct supervisor, which is the athletic director. So coaches, advisors, and athletic directors are to take in family time into consideration when scheduling these around the holidays. The committee felt very confident that the coaches are professionals, and as well as their ADs would be able to make those with decisions with families and safety in mind. Also, we felt it was really important that if a family made a decision to not participate in those scheduled holidays, that they should not be penalized or punished. All right, as we stated at our last presentation back in January, and again tonight, the committee believes that an increased focus on customer service could help to change the perception of facility use in the Eau Claire School District. The committee did recommend some smaller changes within the agreement that we believe will impact that perception. In our presentation, we choose to focus on the items that generated more discussion and more question. However, we wanted to note some other examples that we could be updated. For instance, the no food or drink in the gym and the jacket streets and backpacks left in the hallway, those really don't align with what we're currently doing, so we're recommending changing those. All right. So in conclusion, I want to thank you for the opportunity for us to present again and to provide feedback that our committee members spent quite a bit of time working on. We want to recommend these next steps, and they're right on the board. We would like to recommend some board discussion, the finalization of the agreement, ask the Human Resources to add camp and clinic guidelines to the coach's handbook, sharing the impacted staff with facility use office and building administrators in support, athletic directors, coaches, and advisors, and then work to implement these new changes. I think that leaves us at questions and discussion.
Thank you very much. Board member questions or comments? wondering if this, with the recommendations that were brought before, so we have a full batch now of all of them. I'm wondering if we can get all of those, not in PowerPoint form, but in one document, the full recommendations? Or could we get that?
I do have also the revised facility use documents.
Okay.
The exhibits, and that is, so I can share those with you. And that is slated for something that would come before you for approval in the near future as well.
Yeah, okay.
Did you want these PowerPoints in addition to these, or?
No,
these?
just those.
Okay.
If we could have those. I'm wondering, do board members feel it would be appropriate to simply put this on a future agenda to review each item and discuss, or do we want additional review by other committees, or do we feel bring it to the board at this time? What is the board's pleasure at this point? I'd be okay with considering these items at a future board meeting, because I feel like most of our respective committees have had the opportunity to discuss, and there's a variety of opinions, but I think just bringing it to the board level at this point would be good. But I'm certainly open if others have ideas. Commissioner Harder?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It would be helpful to see maybe a redlined version of this document, just to highlight the differences between the new and the old.
Yep. That's kind of what I'm thinking too. And it might be helpful too to look at and see which of these areas were kind of unanimous as far as the group was concerned, and which were not. And that might be helpful for us just to know as like a footnote in the document, this was something that was pretty mixed, this was something that was 50-50, or this group did not support. I just think it would be helpful, because I think that the ones that, if we can get every entity and stakeholder that was at the table, if we could get them behind those changes, I think those would be the ones that would not take up too much of our time. So if we could know, if that's not too much to ask, if we could just kind of know that and get maybe a footnote of that. Are there other things that would be helpful for board members before we bring it for a future meeting? And to be clear, we'd be bringing two documents.
Right.
The district and community new documents, yeah. Did you have your light on?
Yeah. I just want to thank you for doing the work. Again, another committee with our community people, so thank you very, very much for volunteering and doing this hard work.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I think we have a committee member in the gallery.
Are there any other comments or questions at this point? Okay, so we'll get those brought to a future meeting and consider them then. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks.
That brings us then to our next committee report, which is, I believe, a relatively brief report, and it's regarding proposal number 3 from the Revenue Committee. And hello again, Ms. Johnson.
Hi. Here we go. As Commissioner Luganbill said, our report tonight is fairly brief, but it's the third idea coming out of the Revenue Committee's work. And so that idea is working with Amazon to develop the Amazon Associates program. What that is Amazon has a linking tool that we can create a revenue stream for the district. The district would be eligible to earn up to 10% in rebates from qualifying purchases, not just from the products that we could actually promote. One of the things that intrigued the committee is that we could create a smart basket, which could allow parents or family members to do one-click shopping for each grade level. So we could take our existing school supply list and we could say, here's the recommended items, go right to Amazon, here's the basket, and if you choose to purchase that, you can put it in your cart and I'm done. I'm not going to any stores. I can also add things to that, or I can substitute things out as well. The program can be used by anyone, anywhere, as long as they use the district link, and it can be promoted on our Facebook page, our website, and also Twitter. So as I alluded to before, that the district would provide a link on the district website, and then any person who clicks on the link and finishes a shopping session will help the district earn rebates. You do not just have to purchase the items that we're promoting. You can choose to purchase anything from Amazon. It just has to be, submitted and using that link from the district website in order for the district to generate revenue. Here's a sample of some pictures of, things that we could put on the link. This is just a very basic one, but you can change this throughout the year. If it's, back to school time, you could put school supplies on there to kind of just let people know that that's, maybe one of the things that you're promoting right now. But again, anything that you can purchase on Amazon can still be purchased. It's just going through that specific link, the associates link. This is just a list of the sample of the items and the percentages on the rebates. So you can see that gift cards and wireless service plans and things like that earn a 0% rebate, which would be pretty normal and common. But then for different things, there's different categories. The 10% comes with clothing, and then beauty and Amazon coins. And then if people use Amazon Cloud, and the camera devices, or their smart TV with the Fire TV option, that's like a 7% amount that can come back. And so they kind of have buckets, and those are just defined by Amazon because this is one of their existing programs. If we talk a little bit more about the Smart Basket, right now we currently have a standard school supply list by grade. And so Amazon would allow us to provide a link to that specific basket, and ECSD could pre-fill with each of those grade level supplies based upon the supply list. A parent or guardian would just go to our website to look at that supply list. They can click a link in the cart and fill it, and then they can check out, or they can order additional things at the same time. So we gave a sample of a kindergarten supply list that's currently out there. And so basically, this is what a kindergartner needs. We could have a kindergarten basket. I pick the basket and put it in my cart, and I'm done and ready to go. Are there any questions about the program?
Commissioner Klinkhammer.
I think this is almost a no-brainer for us, and just the fact of this Smart Basket makes me wish I still had children, but that's about the only thing that would make me still wish I had kids at home. One thing I'm wondering about is with this Smart Basket, do they have the ability to, let's say you wanted to go and donate school supplies to a school, and so you're not only buying yours, but you're maybe buying an extra set. Can we set that up so that they also have like a charitable arm of this where you can, I'm buying 2 baskets and donate this one deliver this one to the school? Can we work that in? Do they have something like that?
I didn't ask that specific question, but knowing that we could customize a basket for kindergarten, all the grades that have a school supply list, I think we could be creative and create a basket that says donation basket for kindergarten. And then I think we could work with Amazon to, if there's a specific school that they want it donated to, I think that we could work that out with them. I would ask them for sure just to make sure, but I'm thinking, it's pretty electronic, and the fact that we can set it up standard by grade, I think we could just add a basket that would be considered charitable, or maybe it would be a school basket for Lakeshore, a school basket for Locust Lake, you know what I mean? I think it's doable. I just don't know what that would look like.
I'm sorry. It just seems like a lot of people have that charitable donative intent, but it's going to Target, right? So then it's, I think if all they have to do is click and that gets delivered to the school, what a great thing that would, if we could work that piece in.
Yeah, I would be happy to get a little bit more information, and I can follow up with the board in a Friday memo.
Thank you. Commissioner Humboldt-Boyle.
Lori, along those lines, what about would there be a way of setting up a wish list relative to needs of the district, given that's your same idea?
I would ask that question as well.
Awesome. Yeah, well, the page that just shows how much of a percentage on all of these items is huge, because a lot of people are Amazon shoppers, myself included. So Easy money for the district. Easy money. So we'll put it on the next consent agenda. Hope if that's okay with everyone. All right. So TMI, is that really okay? So next is our, we have one first reading of a policy, 491, children, sorry, I just lost it. Children of divorced, separated parents and parents not sharing the same household. So this policy has not been updated since 2000, and Teaching and Learning and Student Services drafted revisions using sample language from the School Board Association, and we made a few revisions to it at the committee level. So we would ask tonight that we could do a first reading on that policy. And since it's your last, this is your last agenda item, Commissioner Humbuck-Boyle, would you like to read this policy?
Sure.
Okay.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd be honored to.
Okay.
Policy. Okay, the district recognizes the importance of parent participation and involvement in the education of their children. When parents are involved in a legal action affecting the family, such as divorce or legal separation, it is important for the district to have the information necessary to make appropriate decisions regarding their children's educational program and parent involvement in the schools. The district shall maintain neutrality between parents who are or have been involved in a legal action affecting the family, unless otherwise directed by a court order or other legally binding document. It is the responsibility of the parents of students enrolled in the district to keep their children, schools informed of 1, any legal action affecting the family that may have an impact on parent involvement and participation in the schools, and 2, any court order that may define or restrict a parent's rights in relation to children enrolled in the schools. Each parent is individually responsible for observing his or her respective parenting rights, obligations, and restrictions in all of the parents' interaction with the district. If one parent believes the other parent is acting in a manner that is inconsistent with such rights, obligations, or restrictions, she needs to seek enforcement of applicable laws, court orders, and applicable agreements by involving law enforcement and/or the courts. Further, if parents disagree with one another about their respective rights, obligations, or restrictions, it is the responsibility of the parents to obtain appropriate clarifications of or modifications to any applicable agreements or court orders through the family court system. No employee of the district shall knowingly disobey or disregard any provision of a court order relating to a child enrolled in the district. Families of students enrolled in the district shall be informed of this policy via student and family handbooks or through other appropriate means as determined by the school administrator.
Thank you, Commissioner Humbuck-Boyle. Are there any questions regarding the policy draft as presented? Okay, so we will put that on our consent agenda at our next meeting in May. Are there any future agenda items board members would like to request? Okay, I don't see any, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the Eau Claire Area School Board. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.